Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Omar. I currently own a flight school here in Orange County, California. So today I'm going to talk about how to become a pilot. If you're curious how you get your pilot's license, I'm going to talk about that today. So first thing you have to do is you have to be 16 years old to solo, or you have to be 17 years old to qualify to take the test. So what does solo mean? That means fly by yourself. So let's say you're 15, you're still a couple years away from qualifying to take the test, but you can start taking lessons. There's no minimum age to take lessons. Next, you have to get a FAA medical exam by an examiner. So you can't just go to your regular doctor. You have to go to an FAA approved doctor. That list is on the FAA website, and we have students go to our doctor that we use. That has to be done. Now, you don't have to get that done prior to starting lessons. You have to get that done before you solo in the airplane. So most people like to get it done before they start lessons because they'll find out if there's something that disqualifies them, such as you have a heart condition, or you need some kind of special medication that's not allowed to be taken under the FAA guidelines. So you're going to want to find out if you qualify to get a medical prior to starting lessons, in my opinion. So you don't waste all that money and take lessons, and then you're 20, 25 hours in, you find out you can't get a medical because you pretty much just wasted your money. So you need to get a medical, you need to get a student pilot certificate. So a flight instructor has to log into the FAA's website and approve that. If you enroll at a school, they should get your student pilot certificate going. It takes about 5 to 6 weeks to get it in the mail. So you need a student pilot certificate, again, by the time you solo. You're not required to have it before you start training. Next thing, let's talk about the requirement in the airplane as well as the requirement in the classroom. So the FAA requires you to have 40 hours of training, and I'll break that down for you. Of the 40 hours, 20 have to be with an instructor and 10 have to be soloed, which means by yourself. Of the 20 hours of what we call dual instruction, that means with an instructor, 3 of it have to be at night. And as part of the night training, you have to do 10 takeoffs and landings to a full stop. You also have to do 1 night cross-country flight with an instructor. Now, the definition of cross-country flying doesn't mean you're flying from LA to New York, which everyone thinks they are. It simply means you're flying from one airport to another with at least 50 nautical miles straight line distance. Okay, so if you take a pencil and you draw it in a straight line to the airport you're going to, it's got to be at least 50 nautical miles away from the airport you're departing from. That's the night requirement. You also have to have 3 hours of training flying while under the hood, a view limiting device. So that will give you a basic understanding of how to fly while in a cloud. Now, the FAA doesn't want you punching holes through the sky because you're not trained for it. It's dangerous. You can kill yourself. But they want you to have a basic understanding of 3 hours of minimum time with an instructor just in case it accidentally happens. Next, you have to have 3 hours of prep within 60 days of your check ride. So your check ride is what we call your test, the practical test. It's when you show up, the FAA is there waiting for you most of the time at your school that you trained at, the airplane you trained at, and they're gonna give you the test. Now, we call that a check ride. You have to have at least 3 hours of instruction with your instructor within 60 days of the check ride logged in your logbook. Why is that important? Because believe it or not, most people there's a lot of, I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people will tell their instructor, hey dude, I got a business trip coming up. I got finals, I'm in high school, I'm in college, and I'm gonna study, so I won't be available until 3 days or 4 days prior to my check ride. And that's setting you up for failure. Superman himself couldn't pass a check ride doing that kind of stuff. And whenever students told me that, I would say, before I'd ever let them book a check ride, I would make them promise and guarantee that they are available for at least 1 month prior to the check ride with no restrictions so that I can properly train them to pass the check ride. So the FAA's rule in there of 3 hours of training in your logbook at least 60 days prior, it's more of like, an absolute minimum so that you're not wasting the FAA's time showing up for a test you're not prepared for. So that covers the dual part of the requirement of 20 hours. Now you might be asking, well, that doesn't add up to 20. Correct. The FAA gives you leeway and says, you can work on whatever you need to work on that's deficient, and that's up to you and your instructor to decide. You also need 10 hours of solo time. So 5 hours of that have to be cross-country time, okay? The other 5, you ask, well, what can it be? You and your instructor can determine that. If you want it to be pattern work, if you want you want to go out and do some air work in a local practice area, if you just want to get it over with and go do some cross-country flying and get it done in 1 or 2 flights, you can do that as well. So you need 10 hours of solo time in the airplane. So that covers the flight requirement. Now let's talk about the ground school, the classroom portion of it. Typically you need about 20 hours of classroom instruction with an instructor to have enough experience and knowledge to pass this test. Now the 20 hours, there's a lot of debate about this. They're asking, well, when should I do the 20 hours? Should I do it before? Should I do it during? When should I do it? In my opinion, you should do it during the time that you're training, because as you're training in the airplane, the ground information that you're learning, you'll have questions and you'll have an instructor right in front of you to ask questions. So if you're studying at night, you come in during the day, hey, I was reading this last night, I have a question. If you do the ground training ahead of time, number one, you're gonna forget 80% of that information. Your retention level is not gonna be that high. You're gonna forget it all by the time you start training, so you're kind of wasting your money doing that. In my opinion, everybody has a different opinion. If you ask airline pilots, they'll tell you to do this, and if you know, instructors, whatever the case, they'll give you their opinion. This is just my opinion. So I don't recommend doing the ground school ahead of time because you forget most of it and you'll have to redo it. I recommend doing it during the lessons. Now, one thing you can also do is buy an online ground school. We just published ours. It's called Flight Academy Online. This is how I learned to fly 20 years ago. I squeezed all this into this. Flight Academy Online makes it easy to understand complicated concepts. From our in-depth explanations to our state-of-the-art 3D graphics, Flight Academy Online is easy to understand from all your devices at any time, from anywhere. Having been a flight instructor for the past 20 years, Flight Academy Online revolutionizes the learning process. Simplify your training and sign up today. And here's the thing with this, guys. I don't think a lot of these online ground school providers do a good job of telling you that these ground schools are not replacements for flight instructor, doing ground training with flight instructors. They're great tools. They will definitely reduce the amount of time it takes you to spend with an instructor if you're really dedicating that time to studying with the ground school, but they're not replacements. I would call them supplemental to you and your instructor time. It'll help you save money, but it won't be a replacement. Your question might be, why is it not a replacement? Because you can always read and study, but how do you know you really know the information? The only way you know the information is if you have a trained professional poking you all the time and saying, well, what's this? And you answer it and they say, I don't like your answer. Explain it to me a different way. And then that's when you really find out if you know the information, or you can just, memorize it, but you can't say it back. Because when you go for your check ride, you're gonna have to say it back to the examiner, the FAA examiner. You can't just say, well, I read it. I've seen that 100 times. I know it, but I just can't say it back to you. That doesn't fly with these guys. So an instructor in-person one-on-one is crucial, guys. The online ground schools are great. I recommend them. They're great tools to have when your instructor's not around, but just put your expectations in the right place, knowing that they're not replacements for the instructor. So 20 hours is typically the amount of time you need. The other thing you have to have is you have to pass your FAA knowledge test. So it's a 60-question test. That's a computerized test. It's multiple choice. And we offer that on our website on flightacademyonline.com as test prep or ground school. Now, the test is 60 questions. You have to take the practice test. Well, you should, and you should score at least a 90% or higher on the practice test. Then go take the real test in person immediately after the practice test. You have to go to websites such as psitesting.com to schedule the knowledge exam at your local facility. Not all flight schools are approved facilities. When you pick the facility, you call them and make an appointment, you register on PSI's website, then the day of your appointment, you show up, you take the test. Don't forget to take the endorsement that your instructor has to write in your logbook for you to take the test. The reason why you need an endorsement is because the FAA doesn't want you taking a test you're not ready for. Your instructor must endorse you to take this test, and he's only going to endorse you if you can prove you pass it. How do you prove you pass it? Take the practice test and show him you're scoring a 90%. Let's talk about that. If you're getting a 72%, don't go to your instructor and say, I scored a 72, I'm passing. Let me take the test. That's a bad idea, guys, and I'll tell you why. Are you passing? Yes. Are you setting a good impression when you show up to your check ride and the examiner sees you with a 72% and he goes, gee, this guy had the questions and the answers to the test and he's still got a 72? This guy's lazy. This person's not disciplined. This guy or girl is not putting in the work. They're not going to tell you this, but as a person who's been in aviation for almost 25 years now, I've got close friends that I've known for 20-something years that are now examiners. I've had the opportunity to be an examiner. I've turned it down because of my commitment with the school and the conflict of interest. I know what's going on in their mind. I know what they're thinking, and this is what they're thinking, guys. If you score a 72, they're gonna really go hard on you on that oral exam, on the check ride, because they're gonna say, what else does this person not know? You're not doing yourself any help by being lazy and scoring a 72 on the test. Don't take the test unless you score a 90 or above. That's my personal recommendation, guys. So you need to take a practical test at the end. That's the last thing you need to take. Your practical test is your check ride. Now the check ride consists of a flight portion and what we call an oral portion. So the oral portion, you walk into your school. Of course, at this point, you've been prepped for weeks prior by your instructor, and he or she feels you're ready to take the test. He's endorsed you for it. You've taken a logbook review session. You verify you're fully qualified. I can't tell you how many times people show up to check rides and they find out they're not qualified. Their instructor is brand new, they screwed up, and they didn't do one of the things they were supposed to. So now the examiner collects the exam fee, which is $1,200, and says, you're not qualified. Thanks for wasting my time. Call me back when you're ready. Oh, and when you come back, there's a retake fee of $600. Yes, ouch. Welcome to the real world. You are gonna pay dearly for your lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, and you say, well, how was I supposed to know? Your instructor should step in and teach you that. Now, there's no secret. There's a ton of flight training going on right now. A ton of flight instructors that are brand new at this. They're not gonna know this stuff, guys. Be careful, do your homework, really check. I would check with a couple different instructors and do a logbook review session. Make sure you're fully qualified to take this test. You're gonna walk in, you're gonna start an oral exam with the examiner, and it usually takes 2 to 3 hours. If you are struggling through it and you're having a hard time passing, it can take 4 or 5 hours for it, and that's not a good sign, guys. If you don't pass the oral exam, he'll discontinue the check ride and give you a pink slip and have you retake it. That's a check ride failure. If you're trying to do this for a career, check ride failures are really bad. As a former airline captain, I've been on interview teams at airlines. We look for that. We look for people who have failed multiple check rides. That's a sign of lack of discipline, a sign of they don't study. Whatever the case, it's not a good look, guys. You don't want to have too many check ride failures on your record. Everybody's got check ride failures. I've got a check ride failure. So they're not big deals. Just don't turn them into 4 or 5 check ride failures, because that can be a deal breaker for an airline. If you pass the oral exam, you take a break, usually grab a quick 30-minute lunch, drink of water, use the restroom. Then you go out to the airplane and you go do the flight portion of it, starting with the pre-flight, get in the airplane, you go fly. If all that goes well, you come back and you sign paperwork in the office. The examiner shakes your hand, congratulates you, and says, you're now a pilot, and hands you your private pilot's license on a piece of paper that's a temporary paper. That's good for 120 days. The real one comes in the mail roughly about 90 days later. It depends on how backed up the FAA is at their headquarters in Oklahoma City. Now, if you want to know what a check ride looks like, I sat down with one of our examiners for an extensive 1-hour interview. It's part of our ground school. It's a 1-hour interview, and I asked him every question about the examiner's expectations, the student's expectations, everything you want to know about a check ride is in that 1-hour video on our online ground school. All right, guys, well, that's it. If you have any other questions, reach out to us. I didn't really talk about pricing in this one. I've got another video about pricing if you're curious about that. So yeah, thanks for subscribing. If you haven't yet, click the subscribe button. If you found some value in this video, please click the like button, and I hope you enjoy it.